Following up on our series of selling distressed businesses, first segment we talked about uniqueness of selling a distressed business. This segment will talk about common mistakes that buyers of distressed businesses make. From a buyer's perspective, our firm often sells distressed businesses. We sell 4 or 5 typically every year. And what we find is sellers often make some very common mistakes in the way that they approach buying a distressed business, and factually this gets in the way of them actually closing transactions and causes them to lose deals that otherwise they might have eventually won. And those sort of mistakes are as follows. One, speed is a really large and important factor in selling a distressed business. So if a buyer wants to go through a 2 or 3 or 4 month due diligence process and the timeline to sell is only 3 months, well, obviously that doesn't fit. So speed is a really important factor. A second factor is oftentimes they don't involve a bankruptcy attorney on the seller's point of view or seller's side early enough. And that's usually done because they have an M&A attorney representing the seller. They view it to be an M&A or merger and acquisition transaction. But in fact, it's really an insolvent company transaction. And knowledge and of the bankruptcy laws and the ways to get the business quickly, cheaply, fastly using the law is a real important thing. Third is that oftentimes a seller will want to waste time and money negotiating an incredibly detailed asset purchase agreement with all sorts of representations and warranties. Well, representations and warranties against a seller of a business that's insolvent is not really worth very much because the recourse is not very great. So many of the traditional things that are incredibly important to buyers of a traditional business are not as important to should not be as important to buyers of distressed businesses. In a sense, it's a where is as is sale. The next thing is that sellers oftentimes try to negotiate details of a term sheet or an asset purchase agreement in a teleconference mode. My experience has been that the best way to quickly negotiate the terms of a deal is to get all the parties together in a conference room and to hammer it out over 1 or 2 days. This is the sort of thing, again, because time is so important, speed is so important, that if you get everyone together, you can usually hammer out issues rather quickly, but it's better to happen in person than by telephone. The last thing that I'll point out relative to sellers making a mistake is that usually there's a reason for businesses getting into financial distress. Oftentimes, not every time, but oftentimes that's a function of sellers' management, the management of the company. And in my opinion, the standard assumption that a distressed buyer should make is that he or she will replace a large portion of the management team and plan accordingly. Oftentimes, I think sellers want to give management the benefit of the doubt, and that's usually a mistake because this is a unique chance buying a business in a distressed manner to make strong cultural change within that company, and that unfortunately means that most, if not all, of senior management needs to go away. That concludes our second segment, which was common mistakes that buyers make when trying to buy distressed businesses. Please stay tuned for our third segment, which will talk about some of the key takeaways and key points if you're trying to sell a distressed business.